Daddy, the girl in the trunk is asking you to let her out, our 4-year-old daughter said during a family drive. I didn't miss how my husband's face paled at that moment. Whether he intended to play dumb or not, he looked at our daughter through the rearview mirror with a frightened expression. What a scary thing to say. You shouldn't tell such lies, he said. I glared sharply at him from the passenger seat. Should we pull over at the rest area? I asked. It had been 5 years since we got married, and I had been diligently supporting him while he was busy with work. However, the truth was about to be exposed by my daughter's mysterious power. I, Evelyn Hayes, married my husband, Ethan, when I was 27 years old. He is 4 years older than me. The following year, our daughter, Aria, was born, and she has been growing up healthy and lively. Now she's 4 years old. Our family has been living busy yet happy days. How about going to the zoo next Sunday? Ethan suggested. Yay, I want to see the giraffes. Aria exclaimed. I couldn't help but smile at their cheerful conversation. Ethan has always been kind since we were dating, and that hasn't changed since we got married and had Aria. On his days off, he willingly engages in family activities and is an impeccable father. I'm so glad I ended up with this man. I indulged in happiness while watching my husband and daughter play together. Little did I know these peaceful days were about to come to an end. You're being transferred to a different department? I asked. Yeah, it's company policy. They want me to gain experience in various places. Ethan sighed wearily one day after coming home. He looked dejected as he was being transferred to the busiest department, which meant he might not be able to spend much time with us. Daddy, are you not going to play with me anymore? Aria asked anxiously. I'll do my best to spend as much time with you as possible, Aria. Let's go to the zoo again sometime, Ethan said, wearing a regretful expression as he gently stroked our daughter's head. Watching the two of them, I felt a tightness in my chest, overwhelmed with emotions. Ethan's transfer doesn't involve changes in salary or relocation, but it's still big news for our family. Just the thought of having less family time together made me feel lonely. However, the one feeling the most vulnerable is surely Ethan, adjusting to his new environment. Please don't push yourself too hard, I told him, knowing he has a tendency to immerse himself deeply in things. I worried about him overdoing it, but unfortunately, my concerns turned out to be justified. Initially, Ethan managed to secure time for family and rest despite being busy. However, about a month later, his time at home decreased dramatically. He started working overtime, often coming home late at night after Aria had already gone to bed. He began going out for drinks with his clients more often, and he even started going to work on his days off. Hey, can you take a day off next Sunday? Aria misses you, and you've been working too hard lately, I asked him one evening. Who do you think I'm working so hard for? Should I just turn down client meetings and risk getting fired? He snapped. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just worried about you, I replied. That's none of your business. Anyway, make sure you have money ready for next week's drinking party, he retorted. Seemingly overwhelmed by his workload, Ethan had become irritable and started taking out his frustrations on me more frequently. He was spending extravagantly, claiming it was necessary for entertaining clients, which was starting to impact our living expenses. Knowing his previous kindness, I was more worried than frustrated about his current tense demeanor. I really needed to find a way to get him to take a break, or he was going to collapse from overwork. After half a year had passed since the transfer, Ethan had reached a point where he was coming home mostly just to sleep. Arya, feeling lonely from not being able to see him, began to wear a sad expression more often. I knew things couldn't go on like this, so I was trying to figure out a way for him to take a break. However, as if to thwart my efforts, more bad things kept happening. My mother, who had been suffering from an illness for several years, suddenly passed away in the hospital. "No, Mom," I cried. My father had passed away when I was young, and my mother was my only parent. I couldn't even have a proper conversation with her before she passed away. When I heard the news, I was at home. I was so shocked that I couldn't move for a while. However, Ethan's response was unbelievably cold. "Do I have to go to that funeral too?" he asked indifferently. His attitude shocked me, and I widened my eyes in disbelief. Our relationship with my mother might have been distant, but she was still family. Despite this, he didn't show any sadness or comfort me. Instead, he just complained about attending the funeral. "What are you saying?" "Of course, you have to. It's a family funeral," I snapped. "Don't get mad at me." "Oh, why does this have to happen now?" "I had plans," he replied without any remorse. I was left in shock. In the past, he would have comforted me, maybe rubbed my back, and grieved with me. Now, he seemed nothing like the person I once promised a future with. Naturally, he didn't help with any preparations for my mother's funeral, and I arranged everything alone. On the day of the service, my husband remained silent and sullen. "It's over now, right?" "I'm heading home first," he said after the funeral ended. Ethan didn't help with any cleanup and quickly left. I was initially confused by his reactions, but by then I had lost the energy to be angry. I was simply bewildered and disappointed in him. No matter how busy and stressed from work he may be, his behavior at the funeral was unacceptable. "Mom, Arya will help you," my daughter said. Despite feeling frustrated with him, I finished cleaning up with Arya by my side. Before heading home, I decided to stop by my parents' house for a short while. It wasn't far from our home, and I wanted to reminisce about my mother after saying goodbye. Although I did it as my heart dictated, the decision wasn't wrong. When I arrived at my parents' house with a heavy heart, I discovered something shocking. "Mom, wait a moment," Arya said suddenly. "Huh, Arya?" As soon as we arrived, her expression changed, and she dashed straight into the back room. I had taken her to visit my mother's place several times before, but I had never seen her behave like this. Hurrying to follow her, I found Arya opening the second drawer from the bottom of the dresser as if she was drawn to it by something. "Mom, Grandma wants you to have this," she said, holding an old hand mirror. I couldn't help but catch my breath. The mirror had always been precious to my mother, but she had treasured it so much that even I rarely saw her use it, and I didn't even know where she kept it. Of course, there's no way Arya could have known about the existence of this hand mirror. "What? How did you know it was here, and what do you mean Grandma wanted me to have it?" I asked. "When Grandma was sleeping earlier, she told me that Mom was sad and asked me to give this to you," Arya answered innocently. I couldn't hide my surprise. I didn't think it was a coincidence, so I asked her some questions. I asked about tomorrow's dinner menu, what I was thinking about, and even thoughts I had during the funeral. All things she couldn't possibly know. To my surprise, she answered every question accurately. I'm not sure how long she's had this ability, but it seems like my daughter can know what people are thinking. "Wow, that's amazing, Arya." "You know everything," I said, stroking her head, feeling bewildered. I had always thought that mysterious abilities were just something from stories. I never imagined she actually had such a power. While I was surprised, Arya put her hand on her hip and showed a proud look on her face. "That's right, Arya knows about Dad too." "What do you mean?" I asked, and what she told me was incredibly unbelievable and unforgivable. A few weeks after my mother's funeral, I told Ethan in the morning, "By the way, I'm visiting my friend with Ariane next Sunday." Ethan, who was about to leave for work, abruptly stopped and frowned, looking genuinely troubled. "Really?" "Oh no, I'm off that day." "That's too bad," he replied. Feeling the artificiality in his voice, I quietly smiled so as not to give myself away. Now that I knew the truth, there was no love left for Ethan inside me. On that Sunday, I left home with Arya, killed about an hour, and then returned home. "Dad, he's over there," she pointed, and I headed towards the garage with the shutter still down. After taking a deep breath, I lightly knocked on the shutter. "Ethan, I know you're in there." "Open it." "Hi, Evelyn. I thought you and Arya had plans," he responded, sounding flustered. "It's canceled. If you're going somewhere, we want to come with you," I said. He sounded hesitant to open the shutter. Honestly, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on inside, but I decided to stay quiet and just observe. "Arya wants to go for a drive too," I added. Unable to resist her hopeful voice, Ethan had no choice but to agree. A few minutes later, he reluctantly opened the garage and started our drive together. Sitting in the passenger seat, I looked at Ethan, who was driving, and solidified my final decision. The married life with Ethan had been enjoyable and happy, but I understood those days would never come back. "Hey, did you know Arya has a special power?" I finally brought it up as we merged onto the highway. My husband furrowed his brows in confusion. "Huh, what's that supposed to mean?" "That's a silly joke," he laughed dismissively. "Daddy, the girl in the trunk is asking you to let her out." Arya confidently raised her voice from the back seat. Ethan's face turned pale as he looked at our daughter through the rearview mirror with a frightened expression. "Honey, what a scary thing to say." "You shouldn't tell such lies," he stammered. "But it's true," she insisted. "Should we pull over at the rest area?" I suggested. Ethan immediately looked at me, startled. "Huh, we don't need to do that." "It's just a kid's joke," he said, but I pressed on. "Arya has a mysterious power, you know. Besides, it's hot today, so it could be dangerous if someone's really in there." Ethan flinched and stiffened, but eventually he headed towards the rest area with a contorted expression on his face. Upon arrival, we left Arya in the air-conditioned car and went outside to check the truck. "I don't think there's anything in there. Come on, quickly," I urged. Ethan seemed to realize he couldn't escape anymore and nervously opened the trunk, breaking into a cold sweat. In the next moment, someone jumped out from the trunk. It was a young woman, her face flushed red from the heat. Yes, Ethan had been cheating while Arya and I were out. When we came back unexpectedly, he had no choice but to hide her there. Ethan shook his head nervously at the woman, who seemed unable to grasp the situation. "No, it's not like that. She is a colleague from work. We were just working together," he stammered. "At the new apartment, doing a job that involves getting into a trunk." I chuckled at the blatant lie while pulling a piece of paper from my bag. "And what is this?" I showed them an email that said, "Let's go on a drag date on Sunday." Both of them turned pale. Thanks to Arya, I found out everything. On the day of my mother's funeral, she had confided in me. "Daddy has been spending a lot of time with Harper lately. I'm sad because Harper is taking Daddy away from me." Knowing her power, I got suspicious and decided to investigate. Sure enough, I found undeniable evidence of his affair on his phone. "So I told you that fake plan because I wanted to catch you," I continued. "It's a shame it turned into this kind of drive. It's unfair to look through my phone without permission." Ethan protested, shaking. His absurd remark made me burst into laughter. I had thought he was just busy with work, but he was with his affair partner, Harper, the whole time. Who exactly is being unfair here? By the way, I've been recording everything since we got into the car. I pulled out my phone. The evidence isn't just messages and this video. I also had hidden cameras in the house and garage. And Harper, I know everything about you too. Under my successive attacks, both of them turned white as sheets. I was furious with Ethan, but I couldn't forgive Harper either. She was a 25-year-old new employee in his department. From the messages, it was clear she knew about me and still engaged in the affair, making her equally guilty. "Oh, sorry, Evelyn," Ethan whimpered, probably not expecting to be cornered so perfectly. "Prepare yourselves for alimony," I declared. Hearing my firm words, they both collapsed to their knees. Afterwards, I divorced Ethan. The evidence I gathered paid off, and they were ordered to pay $300,000 in compensation. I also claimed $500 a month in child support from Ethan. Their misfortune didn't end there. The news of their affair spread throughout the company, making things awkward. Eventually, they both had no choice but to resign. Now they're burdened with compensation payments and struggling. Meanwhile, I'm now enjoying peaceful days with Aria. I'll continue to give her lots of love and support her wonderful power so that she can live happily in the future.